Okay, we'll start with this one. Ebony Bridges post-fight posted this via her social media, and it reads, "Good news. No breaks or fractures, just very bad swelling, obviously, and bone bruising. Doctors have said 4 to 6 weeks, no punching. Thanks for the well wishes and positive vibes. Looking forward to some well-earned downtime. Hopefully be able to get home to Australia soon." That's very fortunate news that there are no breaks and no fractures.
I'm still not sure she'll fight again this year.
If not for the situation with her right hand, it's due to the time spent away from home. She spent 6 months away from Australia.
She's probably homesick.
A lot of people interpreted this fight as an indictment against Ebony Bridges' ability to box. I don't know why. It's very obvious what happened. First 3 rounds of the match, she was having it all her way, walking down and stalking Maelys Gangloff. I mean, up until that hand got injured, it was all one-way traffic. Big right hand after big right hand.
You know, people are petty.
Some of those petty people don't know shit about boxing.
They think they do.
You could spit in the wind these days and hit a Sporty Lewis, or would-be Sporty Lewis.
I had Ebony losing the fight.
He did. That's awesome.
It's great.
I mean, really? I mean, like, I'm so surprised.
You did? You know, I never would have expected that.
But I'll tell you what, listen. My card, after 3 rounds, I had Ebony Bridges up 3-0. After right hand, after right hand, after right hand, connected on the head of Maelys Gangloff. And, you know, it's an 8-round fight. After that, Ebony only needed 1 more round to at least secure a draw. And that's what she did at the end of the 5th. I gave the 4th round to Maelys Gangloff and the subsequent 5th to Ebony Bridges. With that, Maelys sweeps the rest of the fight, and I had a draw on my cut. I do think Ebony was fortunate to walk away with the W. I also think Maelys Gangloff was fortunate that Ebony hurt her hand. If not for that, she would have continued to be on the receiving end of those power shots, those looping rights.
Double-edged sword, sweetheart.
If this were poker, your cards would be showing. In other news, unified featherweight champion Amanda Serrano reacted to the news that Eddie Hearn is open to the fight between her and Katie Taylor next year, and he might want to do it at Madison Square Garden.
In New York? Why?
Didn't Amanda Serrano and Jordan Maldonado have some aversion to traveling?
Yeah, but that was during the shutdown.
Unbeknownst to most, Katie Taylor isn't actually based in the United Kingdom. She's based out of upstate New York. Amanda Serrano, similar situation. She's based out of New York City. So the fight is doable in the tri-state area, though why he would want it there is a little strange when there's more fanfare and more enthusiasm for that fight across the Atlantic Ocean than here in the United States.
So should we expect to see this fight in the next 12 months?
Well, I don't know. Stephen Muehlhausen tweeted, "Great to chat with Katie Taylor for DAZN Boxing as she tells me that a fight with Amanda Serrano is bigger now than it would have been 1 year ago." To which Amanda replied, "Nothing personal. I have the utmost respect for Katie Taylor. I, like her, believe this myself. A fight now is way bigger than it would have been then. I've gotten a few solid wins to prove both her and I are the female fight. She has a few mandatories, and I a few fights I want."
It's not a secret she wants to become undisputed at featherweight.
And this isn't exactly a new tune. I mean, this is what we've been seeing the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months. You know, post-fight after the Mercado fight, Lagine Mansa tweeted Amanda to congratulate her on the victory and added, "Next fight, Katie Taylor," to which Amanda replied, "I want to unify first, but if the money is right, I'll consider."
So should we expect this to be the next fight?
No, I don't think so. I don't think this fight happens before this year is out. Eddie Hearn is talking about getting Katie Taylor out there one more time before this year is out in December. And for all intents and purposes, Amanda Serrano is still pursuing undisputed at 126 pounds. On Eddie Hearn's timeline, he wants to do the fight at some point next year, perhaps in the first quarter of it, but at minimum, we're talking about 2022, not 2021. So I don't anticipate that this is going to be the next fight for either of these two ladies.
Up at 135 pounds. We know there's the women's tournament at 140 to crown an undisputed champion. Jess McCaskill is here tonight. All the marbles at 147. What does Katie Taylor do next?
I think she fights again in December, and then I think she has to fight Amanda Serrano. I mean, it's not her fault that that fight hasn't been made. It's a mixture of many things, but that's the past. The future,
get that over the line?
I think we have to. You know, I think Amanda Serrano fancies that fight. I believe she's done a fantastic job to raise her profile. She brings tremendous value in that fight as well. She can be rewarded for that value. I think we can headline that fight at Madison Square Garden. By far and away the biggest fight in women's boxing. We have to do that fight. We have to make that fight because I feel that if we don't, it will be a piece missing of a wonderful career.
And
Any of that sound familiar?
It's not a secret that the longer the fight takes to make, the more you marinate it, the more value gets added to the fight. A lot has happened since Amanda Serrano walked away from the fight in the thick of the pandemic last year. It is conceivable that her marquee value has increased a bit, having appeared on Ring City USA against Daniela Bermudez, more recently having appeared on the undercard of Jake Paul's fight with Tyrone Woodley. I'm not sure if moving forward, that's where we can expect to see Amanda's next fight.
But she's going to be fighting on Jake Paul's undercards from now on.
Well, if that's the case, okay. When is Jake Paul's next fight? Because she is referencing Jake Paul and his team as her new business partners. So it sounds like this isn't a limited engagement for Amanda. She may be fighting on his undercards from here on out. I've mixed feelings about that, I do. I think it's rather cringeworthy, if I'm being honest.
So does Alicia Baumgartner.
It is a bit cringeworthy that Amanda Serrano's opinion on Jake Paul's circus fights suddenly changed as soon as she was able to benefit from it. That's neither here nor there. When can we expect to see Amanda Serrano in the ring again? Because we know when we can expect to see Katie Taylor in the ring again. According to Eddie Hearn, she may fight one more time this year before this year is out. In December. In all likelihood, it could be against the mandatory challenger. Maybe Nicole Wessner, maybe her amateur rival, Estelle Mosley-Yoka, who initially we thought was going to be making an appearance on her husband's undercard later on this month. Apparently not. So, maybe they pulled her out of that situation so they could put her in this situation with Katie Taylor. Maybe that's what that is. Or, I don't know, maybe Katie moves up later on this year, decides to have a rematch with Jessica McCaskill. Your guess is as good as mine because she's got no shortage of options. But at minimum,
Doesn't look like Amanda's going to be next.
because Amanda is still trying to unify the featherweight division and because Katie Taylor still has mandatories to satisfy at 135 pounds.
This is what I always thought. Might not go down this year.
If it ever does. In other news, Deontay Wilder, by way of his social media, released a video of himself going for a swim, training in free water. Not really sure what the purpose of this was, aside from updating his status for his followers. I guess this is what passes for promotion.
Been seeing a lot of Deontay Wilder training videos.
He's lifting weights, he's hitting the mitts, he's going for a swim, and I reiterate, I guess this is what passes for promotion in reference to the trilogy, in reference to the third fight. They've had more time to promote this thing, but I can't say I really see an earnest effort there. There's less than a month left.
The fight's less than a month away.
It's supposed to go down on October 9th. That is only a matter of weeks, and I can't say that there's any more buzz around this fight now than there was a few weeks ago. I can't say that I've seen a big push from either ESPN or Fox to promote this fight on both of their respective platforms, and that's saying a lot because they actually had additional time to promote the fight. From the time that Weinstein ruled Tyson Fury must fight Deontay Wilder for a third time, from the time that ruling came down till now, they've had ample time to really sell this thing to the boxing fans, the boxing community, but a lot has happened since then. The PBC's all tied up with this Canelo Alvarez situation and getting that kind of money, the kind of money that he wants. And you have to wonder if their resources haven't been reallocated to that situation. If an earnest effort isn't going there, thus depriving this fight of the promotion that it needs.
Being honest, I haven't seen a big push on either network.
Not seeing much of a push for Canelo versus Plant either, if I'm being honest. These are supposed to be two major pay-per-views set to go down in the months of October and November, and it doesn't really feel like a promotional effort has kicked off for either of them. They do have more time to promote Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant, but
Isn't there supposed to be some big UFC pay-per-view going down that day?
that's the story, and industry insiders are beginning to speculate as to whether or not Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant will be moved, as to not have to go head-to-head with that UFC pay-per-view. That, in unison with rampant piracy,
They'll definitely cut into the buy rate.
it could. Canelo Alvarez might be the most marketable male athlete in all of sports, and he might be the face of boxing in this country, but even he is not immune to piracy.
You know how piracy affected the second fight between Wilder and Fury?
And how it could very well affect the third as well. I got no fucking idea how much money they're pouring into this thing and whether or not it'll be in the same neighborhood as what they poured into it before. Before, you were looking at something like $60 million in guaranteed purses to the fighters.
That and other operational costs.
You've got to sell 750,000 pay-per-views just to generate $60 million at $80 a pop. At that price point. That's just the generator.
That by itself don't cover all the operational costs.
You gotta remember, the cable and satellite companies take anywhere between 40 and 50% of whatever comes in. So you've still got to sell well over 750,000 pay-per-view buys just to break even.
To break even, you'd likely have to sell 1 million pay-per-view buys.
Those kind of guarantees and those kind of operational costs, you better believe it. And the same applies to this Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant fight. That's a $50 million fight. You might have to generate 625,000 pay-per-view buys in order to generate $50 million. But in order to break even, given all the other operational costs and the cable and satellite companies, their cut, you'll actually have to sell more than that just to break even.
That's all before they even start making money.
Maybe the reason we're not seeing more of a promotional push for Wilder versus Fury 3 and even Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant to some degree is because they've exhausted their resources.
They bit off more than they could chew.
And that's not even the first time that happened. You're talking about a market where Manny Pacquiao, in spite of all his success and fanfare, he only sold about 250,000 pay-per-view buys.
I know there was a late replacement.
But it still means the same thing. Manny Pacquiao, off his name alone, couldn't crack 300,000 pay-per-view buys.
Do you think Wilder versus Fury 3 could do any better?
To be completely honest with you, I don't know, and I don't know how well the Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant pay-per-view will do, because it might have to compete with a UFC card happening that same night if they don't move it, and because of rampant piracy in the sport, which has severely cut into how well a pay-per-view does. There's a lot of problems, and maybe those problems are the reason that Deontay Wilder's training videos by way of social media is the most promotion that this upcoming trilogy has got. Maybe they just ain't got it in the budget to promote this thing, because I haven't seen much of a push. You know, Fury's not helping him promote it because he's gone into radio silence. He's not posting very much on social media, and he's the one with the silver tongue. He's the one with the gift of gab.
Well, the undercard's still alright.
Yeah, if you're a hardcore boxing fan and you actually know who Robert Helenius, Adam Kovnowski, Frankie Sanchez, and F.A. Ajagba are.
It's looking like a tough sell.
Finally, just in reference to that Caleb Plant versus Canelo Alvarez fight, Plant on negotiating with Canelo, he found out that I'm not a fighter you can just push around. We had a deal and then he would come back with more demands, Plant recently said in an interview on the PBC podcast. We had a deal, then he'd come back with more. So, you know, it's like, I don't know what his deal was. He knew, and I think he found out, we're not a team and I'm not a fighter that he can just push around and bully. I didn't know how the deal was going to get resolved, continued Plant. I try not to get caught up in those things. It fell apart. What I can control is my effort and my attitude, and that goes towards training and making sure I'm staying in the gym and being prepared for when the opportunity arrives. People are going to say what they're going to say, Plant said. I can't control what people say about me. What people say about me isn't really any of my business. A lot of those people, what have they accomplished? What have they done? That's really the only emotions I saw in that. What did they do in life that they conquered and overcame? Very spirited words from the reigning IBF champion, though I think what's being left out of the conversation here is that the only reason we are here is because Canelo Alvarez revisited the fight. He had other options.
And even if things with those options didn't work out,
he had already fought 3 times in the last 12 months against Callum Smith and Avni Yildirim and Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, he made enough money that he could have sat out the rest of 2021 if he wanted to, but he wanted undisputed. And I'll go as far as saying that he wanted undisputed to become an undisputed champion more than Caleb did, because you heard what Caleb said. The fight fell apart. And when the fight fell apart, did you see Caleb Plant and his people offering for Caleb to cross the street?
No.
When the fight fell apart, did either Caleb or his people offer to let DAZN do the fight? Because in case you guys forgot, DAZN offered to do the fight as well.
Caleb offered to go over there and let them do it?
Because the way I see it, the only reason we're here right now is because Canelo Alvarez wanted us to be here right now. When this fight was on life support, they pulled the plug on it. It was Canelo Alvarez that got the AED out and revived it. Caleb Plant has been doing a lot of talking to the media about a lot of things. The Canelo Alvarez fight, the Canelo Alvarez team, Eddie Reynoso's gym, casting an air of doubt, an air of suspicion over all of his fighters based on what just happened with Oscar Valdez. He's been doing a lot of talking that Canelo Alvarez himself isn't doing.
No, Plant's rubbing elbows with Andre Ward.
Caleb is spending all his time trying to paint Canelo Alvarez to be a diva, yet he has to have a village built around him in order to fight this diva.
Whatever, man.
Seriously, Caleb Plant hasn't shut the fuck up since this fight got made, assuming it even is made, because I get the sneaking suspicion that things aren't as stable.
We don't even have a fight poster yet.
I don't want to speak prematurely and make proclamations, because boxing really is the theater of the unexpected, and if you've been around this sport long enough, you'll realize that.
Anything can happen.
Every time I see Caleb Plant get out there, badmouth this Canelo Alvarez guy, I get the sense of impending doom for Caleb. I get the sense that he's only making the situation worse. He is compounding.
You're really not helping yourself.
Just get the sense that he's writing a check that his ass can't cash.
Gonna bounce.
And it is the way he's carrying on. We're not here because of Caleb. We're here because Canelo Alvarez thought enough about becoming an undisputed champion that he decided, him and his team, decided to revisit this fight after it initially fell apart. And before that, Caleb was approached 2 times. This was the third. The fourth, really.
Because they approached him last year.
Then again, earlier this year, for what was supposed to be a fight in May, they get through what they get through. They revisit the fight for what's supposed to be a fight in September. What was supposed to have been a fight in September, that fell apart. Canelo revisits the fight. Now it's supposed to be for a fight in November. I mean,
Canelo's come to you 4 times.
Fuck are you trying to kid? Has Caleb Plant ever once offered to cross the street and let the zone do the fight?
Would you be making $10 million right now without Canelo?
If the fight fell apart and the Canelo Alvarez people decided not to revisit it, maybe they decide to sit the rest of the year out instead. Whatever. If they don't make that decision to come back to the fight, what was Caleb Plant gonna do?
This fucking guy, man.